Hello, hello. I think we're live. I'm pretty sure we're live. I'm Jamie Trull. Hope everybody's doing well. Happy Wednesday. It is a rainy Wednesday here where I am in Nashville, Tennessee. What's it like by you, Sheena?
There's actually, that's why I was having to close the blinds earlier.
Yeah.
We finally have some sun in Idaho, which I forgot what it looked like.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. Yeah, we've had sunshine, but today is kind of a dreary day. So we have kind of a special event today. I have a special guest, as you guys can tell. I'm really excited about this one. It's really topical and timely for where we're at right now, too, sitting on March 31st, 2021. So we're going to talk about taxes. And we're going to talk about not just this year's taxes, but we're going to talk about, having what a CPA does and having a CPA on your team, a tax accountant on your team all year round, and how that can be helpful from a tax strategy perspective. So that's why I have Sheena here. Sheena, for those who don't know, is one of my preferred vendors. You guys know I have the best preferred vendors in the world, as if that wasn't obvious by now, but I love to showcase them and let you guys get to know who they are so you know why I love them so much. So I'll let Sheena kind of do her own intro, but as Sheena said, she lives in Idaho, but she takes clients everywhere, right, Sheena?
I do. Yeah. Yes.
Yep. As all of our preferred vendors kind of work with people all over the place. So you don't need to have a CPA that is in your own hometown unless you really love going to your CPA's office and hanging out with them. But I'm not really sure how many people really love that, although they probably would if Sheena was their CPA. So, all right, guys, I'm live right now in Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners, my Facebook group, live on our YouTube channel, Jamie Trull. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also on my business page. So wherever you're watching us from, say hello, tell us you're here. We're going to talk a little bit about tax strategy, and if we have some time at the end, we'll take some of your questions around taxes and tax strategy. So, Sheena, you do your own intro now. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Well, thanks, Jamie. And I have to say, I love being a part of the group. I know the rigorous vetting you did to bring on the vendors. And so I feel so honored to be part of it because, you are bringing so much information to the masses and we want to be able to explain it the best we can. So I have been a CPA since 2009, which is kind of crazy. This is my 14th tax season. I was having to count them all up the other day. But I'm going, I love tax season in the way that there's so much opportunity with tax strategy. And that's what really drew me to it. I did some auditing in my background as well. And something I always kind of get the question on how you brought up is that what is the CPA and what do we do? And can we go across state borders like lawyers and real estate kind of stop at the line? And so there's that cool thing about CPA mobility that we can service clients across the states. Most of my clients are down in Texas and Florida. To all my clients down there, shout out to them. Got some clients in Hawaii too. And so, I think it's just neat. And because the CPA part of it, you don't have to be a CPA to do taxes, right? There's EAs, there's just tax preparers. And so that gives us extra distinction and taking 40 hours of CPE to stay up to date with all that. And so I've been taking a lot of trainings to stay up with all the stimulus going on, to walk my clients through that. So I've been doing it for a while and I just love sharing with my clients. My clients are really important to me. For those first calls that I go through, people kind of are surprised when I'm like, tell me about yourself. What are your goals? I want to get to know you. I don't want to just have you hand me your tax work and go send you on your way.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, when people are looking for a CPA too, and I like to talk about what do you look for? And of course, you need to ask the technical questions. Do you have experience doing X, Y, Z? Right now, it's really important to be checking with your CPA about how comfortable they are with all the stimulus stuff going on, especially if you're somebody who has gotten some of that, right? So I think that's really important, but also personality fit is too. And so that's why, when I actually sit down with all my preferred vendors, I talk to them. I talk to you guys actually relatively a decent amount because I like to get to know them. And I like to make sure that they're going to be people that are relatable, right? Because if you're watching me, you're probably here because I explain things in a way that is relatable and understandable, right? Unlike what maybe you've experienced from people who are CPAs in the past, or other just accountant types, right? So I think that's really, really important, is that when you are looking for an accountant, you are picking someone that is relatable to you, that you feel comfortable with. I think that's even more important for women, to feel comfortable in that situation where you can ask questions, you can get the information that you need. You don't feel judged. Like you don't want to come out of those meetings feeling like, oh, I don't, just that like negative feeling. Like you want to feel good and excited. And so I think that's really important to make sure you have that kind of fit and that kind of rapport with whoever your accountant is. And that was one of the things I loved about you, Sheena, because you remind me a lot of me. You remind me of a similar background, kind of what different ways, but a relatively similar background. And so for me, I just fell in love with you immediately upon meeting you. So, and so this is actually a really good question that Autumn is asking. And this is a question I've seen in the group. So I'm going to start with this because I think it's a really good lead into the conversation that we're going to have. So Autumn is asking, and I'll get your thoughts first, and then I'll give my thoughts too. But what's the biggest difference in a CPA and a tax preparer? What could you expect from your CPA? And then I think we can go into sort of some of the different ways you can work with your accountant or CPA over the year, and lead into kind of the topic that we're talking about today. But what are your thoughts on that, Sheena?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of a touchy one, but in a way, because I think there's so many tax preparers, there's so many that are these franchise firms where you can go into and you can hand them your documents and they plug it in their software and basically spit out a tax return for you. Beyond that, a CPA is looking for strategy. I'm asking questions. I'm saying, I'm looking at last year also and going, this happened. Why did it change this year? Or digging deeper because I have that extra knowledge that leads me to ask those questions. I also can look at strategy because, kind of like I was saying, we take all this continuing education per year. And just about anybody could say they're tax preparer, and there's a quick, what do you call it, like exam or test you can quickly sign up and do. And that's fine. Not everybody needs a full-blown CPA is something too, but if you want that extra strategy, if you have a business and if you have rentals or real estate, and that's what I strategize in especially, you want to take it to that next step because there's things that could be missing.
Yeah. And I think too, what gets confusing, and it's no wonder that people get confused on this topic because it ranges so widely what people offer, right? So it's not like a CPA, like you could talk to 10 CPAs and the things that those people do are very different. And so that I think is where it gets confusing for people because they're like, what are the expectations? And the truth is, the expectation is you want to clarify what you're engaging them for, right? So I think a lot of people think because they have a CPA prepare their taxes, right? Or an enrolled agent or whoever's preparing your taxes, that they are, your kind of also advisor, that they serve in an advisory role, unless that is something that you have specifically contracted, like read your contract. What are they telling you, if you have one, right, that they're going to do? Then that likely is not going to be part of scope, especially if you're paying like $250 for a tax return. You're not going to get tax strategy with that as well. You're really probably not, right? So tax strategy is a little bit of a different animal, and some CPAs offer it and are comfortable doing that, but it is something you want to make sure that you and you don't have to be a CPA necessarily. You can be an enrolled agent or something like that. So regardless of what people call themselves, right? Accountant, CPA, EA, what do they do for you, right? What do they do? And if they're a tax preparer, they largely are probably starting at that place of prepping taxes. But outside of that, you want to understand if you are looking for something that is a broader relationship, more of a consultative thing, you want to make sure that that's something that they do and that's the arrangement that you actually have with them. I think a lot of people thought with the stimulus that they had different arrangements and that their CPA was going to be able to answer a lot of these types of questions for them, but that wasn't the nature of their agreement. And that honestly wasn't even something that the CPA was doing. So I think that's something that we have seen time and time again, is just make sure you ask those questions. Don't feel like you should know. I think a lot of people go into those conversations with a CPA and feel like, well, I should know what they do. No, because they all do different things. So make sure you're clarifying what exactly they're doing and what different offers they have that might be helpful for you. Yeah. Okay. So then let's jump into that strategy piece. Like we've talked about tax strategy. Actually, Bree's here. We talked about that in this group before for anybody who's seen it. But what does that mean to you, to Sheena, in your business, right? When somebody wants help with tax strategy, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, and I want to touch on too, real quick, what you said is clarifying what your CPA does, because, and especially at tax time, I have some clients that are asking me about old IRS notices, or they're getting now for past tax returns that are done wrong. And so I had to say, well, you engaged me to do your tax return. This is extra. So just know. And then traditional CPAs too charge by the hour. So you just want to be so clear on that, because that's why I left firms, because I want to be in control of not billing for every minute I talk to my clients. And they really love that. I feel it opens up that communication. But for me, tax strategy goes to like, what is your goals? What is my client's goals when I talk to them? And so the wheels start turning, where I start thinking about, okay, if I'm seeing this coming through, what can I advise you to do? And I also then meet on a monthly basis with a call with my clients, and then we talk about it. Accountants typically really work we're like a lagging indicators, where we're kind of always reviewing past data. And so strategy is going, okay, here's the past. Are you doing your reconciliations? Are we looking at your financials? But what can we start doing for the future, and especially tax planning? Good example, a client of mine didn't come to me last year, and he's going to pay about $15,000 in taxes because he didn't set up his 1031 exchange right, which we had chatted to before jumping on the camera. And a simple meeting to get your CPA involved could have changed all that. So just an easy example.
The easiest, and I know that this is going to be an annoying answer, Jody, and Jody knows it. Jody knows this is going to be an annoying answer. But what I will say is, if you think the cost of having a good tax preparer, tax strategist is expensive, try having a bad one. That's what that is. Always more expensive to have a bad one, like Sheena said, right? So it's one of those things that is an investment. Again, you do want to put due diligence into making sure that person is worth whatever the cost is. And I do recommend shopping around, honestly, but don't shop around just on price. That's the mistake that people make. They shop around on price, not expertise, not strategy, not fit. Like they're just looking for the cheapest price because they're commoditizing tax preparation, right? Thinking like, well, everybody's going to give me the same answer. Not necessarily, right? Now, maybe after the fact, right? In most cases, most of your tax preparers, hopefully, now they may be able to find different things. They'd be able to find different things that, maybe some would make mistakes, maybe others, but wouldn't. But where you really get the value is from looking forward, like Sheena says, right? Looking back, tax preparers, if they're qualified, if they're doing the right things, you don't have as much opportunity for savings when you're looking backwards, because that's stuff that already happened, and there may not be a whole heck of a lot you can do about it now. It's the looking forward. It's the looking forward that's worth paying some money for, right? So a lot of times tax preparers can look back to look forward, right? That's kind of the starting point is, okay, let's figure out what happened. And now let's look forward and figure out how we can make things better, right? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a big tax mistake, but I tell you, like, it happens all the time. Yeah. Let's see. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Tax prep is looking back. And I say this too, even when I do my work, because I am a sort of a profit strategist, right? So it's one thing to be able to look back at your numbers and be like, oh, that happened. It's another thing to be able to use that information to then make changes in the future so that you can make things better, right? That's what being a CFO is. A bookkeeper is like, I'm going to look back and here's your stuff, right? Now, some bookkeepers can do some of this forward-looking stuff too, but there is a difference between what you can do when you're looking backwards. That's why we commoditize it, because we're like, it's just, it's just a task I have to do. Bookkeeping, taxes, just a task, versus the looking forward, which is strategic. It's having vision. It's thinking about what's coming. It's thinking about how you can save money going forward. That is a wide open space, right? There's so much opportunity, and people don't realize how much opportunity there really is. All right. So tell us more about what that means then. So if you're working with somebody on strategy, what does that look like for somebody that comes in to work with you on tax strategy? How often are you meeting with them often? What's kind of, how does that work in the Sheena world? Again, I clarify this because it's going to be different for different tax preparers. That's an important question to ask. What does it look like to work with you?
Yeah, definitely. So after or working through tax season, getting the prep done, because of course we have a filing deadline, which is extended till May 17th, which is nice. But as I bring clients on and we work together, and we're doing this now as we're wrapping up a tax return. For example, one of my clients that I'm working with, we met up and we reviewed her real estate rental properties. And we talked through, I added all the numbers up for her and she's kind of had this feeling that probably this property wasn't the best cash flowing one. So we talked through it. And I was able to give her the full numbers so that she could make the right decision. Is this one worth keeping, or is it time to let it go? And that's just because I specialize in the real estate world, being rentals. I love the idea of passive income, multiple streams of income. And that's something I think that really COVID has really taught us, is that we can't just have one thing, because if it's taken away, like it did last year, for many people, having those other streams of income work through. So yeah, being able to talk that through with her. It's also a sounding board. My clients just like to have on those monthly calls, although I offer unlimited email if they're in my advisory. And so I love the research part. If they ask a question, kind of, for example, I had a client say, well, a friend of a friend of a friend's brother told me that, and you always go, okay, time to bring it on. And he said, well, can I deduct my RV? And so, of course, I start looking it up, going to my research avenues, because I'm like, yeah, I know there's some areas that could be. And so I gave him some links to back up what my decision was. And what I said, well, not for this past year, but going forward, if you'd like that deduction for your RV, this is what you need to do. So it's creating that path. And so that he thought about it. Same client, I also said, he has a great guest house in his backyard. It's like, rent it out, get extra deductions, bring in some extra income. And I love to see he didn't even think of that. And so it's like other thoughts, and he can talk that through. And so chatted with that client yesterday, and he's kind of working on it. So it's just having someone from an outside perspective bring those things in. And I think it's always easiest to have someone that's not in it, and especially emotionally attached, because finances, and especially your CPA, and your tax accountant, they know pretty much everything about you, besides, I like to joke, your blood type, right? I know your kids, I know your spouse, you know all those details, where you moved, what you've been doing. So you really just have to have that great relationship where you feel like you can ask questions. And I definitely like what you said, not feeling judged, because it's a no judgment space. When you come on that call, you just lay it out there and we talk through it.
And I think that's one of the things that is like behind, a lot of people don't hire tax preparers or sometimes even bookkeepers, right? And I think that some of the reason sometimes is because of how vulnerable that feels, right? It's like you're literally walking around like with a robe open, just like, hey, everybody, take a look. Hopefully nobody's picturing that anyway. But it feels like that. It's very, very vulnerable to be like, here's all my financial information, like to a person that you just met on a phone call, right? And that's why I do think trust and fit and referrals and all things like that are really important in this process, not from necessarily like a security standpoint. If you're a professional, like Sheena's not going to run off with your information, take your social security number and steal your identity. I don't think. I hope not.
No.
but I think like it still feels like there's this like, oh, are they going to judge me because of certain financial decisions or things that I've done or not done, or am I doing this right? And so I think that happens too in business owners, right? Because we're like, what are they going to think of this? What are they going to think? And we just either don't hire someone or avoid those conversations as much as possible. So trust is really important. I was also laughing at the friend of a friend's brother too, like Jackie was, because I tell you, like that's my favorite now. It used to be that I used to get the like, so my friend's sister-in-law's cousin said that they are deducting, and I'm like, oh, this should be good. Now though, now what I get is, so I saw this TikTok video that said, and I'm like, whoa. So that's like the new like cousin's brother situation. But it is, I'm glad you like the research part, because I think that's just to like, I'm going to bust y'all's bubble a little bit, like on CPAs and tax accountants and people like that. Okay. We don't know all of the answers to your questions off the top of our head. I know that's shocking. How many pages? Do we know how many pages? I used to know how many pages. Bree's here. She probably knows. How many pages is the tax code? And how often is it changing, right? So we don't know all the things about all the things. But the good ones are really dang good at doing the research, and the really good ones enjoy that research, right? They like to figure things out. They like to go find the answers to the puzzle. So much of what, I mean, we even had one of the classes I took in college, I don't know about you, but I had to take an accounting research class. And that was what my professor told me, like, the most important thing, you're not going to remember most of the stuff you even take on, like when you take the CPA exam, you're not going to remember most of the stuff. You'll remember the principles and the fundamentals, and you will know where to find the information that you need. And that is the real skill, right? That's the real skill. So when you're asking CPAs and things like that questions and they don't know it, the answer off the top of their head, doesn't mean they're not good at their job. Give them some time to find it, because that's where we shine, right? We're really like covert researchers. And that's, I think, why for me and why CPAs are set up, like all this stimulus stuff is brand new. But if you're good at the research aspect, right, you're going to be better at understanding the stimulus. So we understand the fundamentals, and then we can use our research to understand what all the stimulus, acts and all of that are saying. That I think is a skill that we have. I feel like that's low, Bree. I feel like it's more than that. I'm going to look it up while Sheena's talking next, because I feel maybe I'm wrong. You're probably right. I don't know why I would question you, Bree. But I feel like it's more than that. It's crazy. Okay.
It's a lot. Yeah. Well, something I was going to say on that was why I used to be afraid to put myself out there getting clients, because I don't know it all off the top of my head. And, when you have a CPA or your tax preparer that can say, that's out of my wheelhouse, I don't know, but I'll get back to you and I'll look it up, because I will do my darnest and check it out. But I also know how to filter through, because Google now, there's this quote, I listen to so many podcasts, and it was like, we have so much information available to us. It's crazy. We're not all millionaires with six packs, right? I mean, we have all the info, but it's filtering it through and figuring out what actually is right. And then also what is working for our situation, because what works for your friends, brothers, aunts, uncle, their situation is not necessarily going to work for you. And that's always something I say, like, well, why is it not the same?
Yeah.
Why is your deductions or your refund so much lower? And let's talk through it, and let's try to figure that out. So it's just knowing.
And I think too, just thinking about it, I think there's a level of curiosity that also can make you successful in this. So I think that that's one of the things that can set apart like a good CPA, a good accountant from a not so good one is, are you curious, right? Do you want to learn this stuff? Do you want to know? Do you want to research it? And I think that behind is kind of behind it. Like you want that intellectual curiosity of like, oh, I want to know this, versus the CPA that's like, if they're just like blanket statement, not my wheelhouse, that might not be the person that you want to have. You want somebody that's like, not my wheelhouse, right? They may not know all the answers, but let me see what I can find out for you. Like that is that I will take that answer 100 times over versus just being like, eh. And I also don't want somebody, to your point, Sheena, that's like, I know all the answers about all the things. I can't tell you. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, I think, with the profession. I'm gonna rail on it. The profession, not really, because I love most of the people that do this stuff, but there are select people that like to be the purveyors of all the things. And so they have this attitude that is very unapproachable because it's just like, well, I know all the answers. And in truth, like, that's fine. If you want to act like that and you do know all the answers and you can back it up, okay. But like we said, chances are they don't. And so they talk a big game. And it's really frustrating to me as someone who sees that, because business owners go to people who are professionals for advice, and they will take that at face value because they're like, oh, well, they're a professional, and they don't do their own digging. And that has hurt so many people during this stimulus effort, is that they haven't necessarily had service providers that they trust, but those service providers haven't let on that they don't know. They're just like, nope, you don't qualify for that. And they're like, okay. And then they find out later, hopefully, if you're here, you're hanging out, you're like, oh, actually I do. And there's information where you can go back. But again, there are a lot of amazing accountants and service providers who are killing themselves right now. So shout out to those people. A lot of those people are here too, and come and watch this information because they want to stay up to date too. So, I don't mean to, really dog on the profession, but I do think that is an important thing, is that the answer of that I don't know that off the top of my head, but let me see what I can find out. That's a good answer. It doesn't mean you have, somebody's, not qualified and things like that. But, oh yeah, I told you, I knew I was right, Brie. I was like, it's way more than 4,000 pages. Like I could sit down and read 4,000 pages. Like I've done it. The bill in December was 5,500 and something. Yeah. But 74,608 pages. Yeah. And that's exactly. That's pre the new Tax Cuts and Job Act. I keep saying new, and we may have a whole new tax code by the end of the year. Who knows? Yeah. So this kind of thing, right? Where a lot of service providers maybe are looking at not updated to date information, or, not necessarily staying up to date. Now, you do want somebody who is, like Sheena said, we are required to do a lot of continuing education, right? A lot of continuing education. So hopefully they're doing continuing education on some of these important matters too. Okay. So tell me more. So Sheena, you've mentioned it a couple of times. You mostly do work on taxes and both tax preparation, but also tax strategy. But your specialty is in rental and real estate, right? So so your ideal client is somebody that has rental units, real estate, investments, those types of things. Tell us a little bit about who the best client for you is.
Yeah. Well, I have several online service providers too, a lot from this group. I love working with everyone from this group because they have usually learned so much from you and watching the videos. And so I think that gets in our mindset too of what we need to know and what we need to ask our CPAs. But yeah, I love working with realtors, people that have several rentals or wanting to get into that and laying that foundation of what needs to be done if they're working their 9 to 5 and want to get to financial freedom. I like the FIRE movement idea. Are you into that at all?
No.
No? Well,
tell me about it.
Yeah, the FIRE standing for financial independence, retire early.
Yeah.
So that really got me into looking into passive income. And so that's something else. I think if you're in a niche area that is very specific, that's got a lot of nuances, which real estate does. Like I mentioned earlier, the 1031 exchanges, it's a 2-page piece schedule in the tax return, super complicated though. And so being able to know all those details, and so that's what I'm specializing in, but I also do it myself. I'm also a business owner. And I do have to say, the CPA Sheena before I became a business owner gave completely different advice. I said, this is what you should do. This is how you should, but I didn't walk the walk. And kind of same for rentals. I didn't really understand, but now I dig even more because I understand those things and I want to find out for myself, but also for my clients. And so, yeah, looking at rentals, a big thing is making sure finding that balance between making your paper tax return, we'll say like paper losses because of depreciation. That's my big caveat where I'm always like, I see so many times in the past that depreciation isn't set up correctly with rentals. That can be a big thing because you're losing out of money. Kind of a thing I was going to mention too. I reviewed a client's taxes that she self-prepared a couple years ago through a big service provider. We don't need to name names, but where they do it yourself. And it was disallowing her loss on her rental, which should be reducing her other income to get her a bigger refund. And I looked at that and I redid it in my software and changed a refund by thousands of dollars. And it was just because it shouldn't have been disallowed. And it was, I knew the reasons why so that I could fix that and also get the correct appreciation. So that's a big thing. If you're doing those, if you've got those rentals or flipping, I have construction clients and people that are flipping houses. Those have special rules as well. People getting classified as dealers with their dealing, they call it flipping a lot of houses versus maybe it's a one-off and it's going to be subject to capital gains. So it's just knowing what kind of situation you're working with and being able to filter through that.
Yeah. And if I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. I don't believe any business owner, unless you are a CPA, should be doing their own taxes or an EA or somebody who's well-versed in it, because, maybe that worked and that was fine. TurboTax, when you got a couple W-2s and not a whole heck of a lot else. Okay. But once you're a business owner, there are a lot of avenues that open up to you. Even if you're just self-employed, there are a lot of different avenues that open up to you. And there are also more things that can go wrong. Right? Like that's just the fact of the matter. So getting somebody who's qualified to help you with that can really help. And I wanted to get to, let's see, there was a question here. Let's talk about this a little bit. So payment structures for CPAs. We pay ours a business return and a personal return. What about mid-year support? So that can range, and I'll talk to Sheena about what she does. Sometimes it's a flat fee. Sometimes it's an hourly consultation. Oftentimes if you sign up for an annual plan, sometimes that may include your personal and business return. Again, it very much varies based on the CPA, but how do you structure kind of your payment schedule for what you do when you're giving kind of year-round advisory advice?
Yeah, so I work on flat fees so that I don't have to worry about the hourly billing. And so I don't miss that at all in the public accounting world. But also it just makes it easier for my clients to budget, and they know that up front. I charge that up front as well. I have to say it's nice too, because it gives some incentive for everyone to gather their info as well, because they know they put that investment into themselves. And so I do it a couple different ways. Sometimes we'll just do the tax return. If a client's not quite ready, they want to get their taxes done, think about the rest, and then we'll do maybe a quarterly check-in and review it that way. And so there's a fee for that consultation, or I wrap it all into one fee, which depends too. I know that's not the favorite answer, but it just depends on what type of business tax return or personal tax return they have and what's included. And then it's just that monthly consultation throughout the rest of the year for me, so that we basically at tax time, it's such a smooth sailing from there because we've worked all year long to get it together. And you touched on it earlier, and I cannot say it enough, is if you're coming to your tax preparer in the spring, even this time of year, there's not a whole lot we can do. There's a few things like IRA contributions, but it's what you do all year long to make sure you're ready.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And so Michael was asking, I just want to point this out. We talked about this a little bit in the beginning. So he's looking for somebody in the Delaware, North Columbus, Ohio area. Now, of course, I'll say, you can get a local CPA, but you don't have to, right? You don't have to. So especially there are some states that get a little bit more complicated in their state tax laws, specifically New York, California. Those you might want to consider having somebody local because of just some of the specifics about those state taxation things. But for the most part, a CPA is a CPA and can do your taxes anywhere. So I think we're moving away from the business model of like the CPA on the corner type of thing, right? Where like you take your documents and even if you find someone that lives in your area, in most cases, the vast majority of your interactions will probably be virtual, in which case, isn't it better to find somebody that's a good fit for you and not necessarily just somebody that's local, right? So now some people just really like that. Like, I will tell you, my father will absolutely never change his CPA because he likes to go. He's, I think, one of the last people that actually goes to the man's office and sits down with him. But especially now in the post-COVID world, I think it's going to be even more common for most of this stuff to be done virtually. It's also more efficient for you. It's more efficient for the tax preparer. There's all different kinds of portals where you can submit things securely now, right? You don't have to worry about, that kind of thing. So I would just question whether, think about why you really want somebody local, and maybe think about if having somebody that is somewhere else would be something you'd be willing to try. It's not for everybody, but it may be something that would be worth it if you can find somebody that you connect with. Okay. Yeah. And Bree says Ohio as well. So I guess New York, California, and Ohio. I don't know.
Yeah. Ohio, I've got a couple clients over there, and it is trickier with this state or the local and city taxes. The other thing to point out too is because I specifically emailed the state of Ohio. I tried calling them, their phone number, the answering machine said, we're not answering calls right now. We're so busy. So I emailed them and I said, I have a client that has the PPP. Federally, we're getting it forgiven, and so it's not taxable for that client, but I cannot find out what Ohio's take on it. Are you conforming? Are you not? And so I got an email back and she said, well, at this time, we're not conforming, but we usually do. So you're going, thanks a lot. But it's also knowing what avenues to take. And so with that particular client, I said, well, if they're saying they're most likely going to conform and it's going to be forgivable, we're going to extend you. We're going to wait for them to forgive it or not make it taxable as well. Or if we file it on the presumption that it is taxable, then we may have to amend it. So we're just going to hold off on that particular client. So I've been in communication, keeping them up to date, but it's just knowing where to go. And it's checking out those state rules, and especially when you've got all those things.
That conformity thing is one of the reasons that I'm telling people it's better, like it can be better to wait if any of these things apply to you, right? If your state is taxing PPP or EIDL advances, things like that, then it may be worth it to wait and see if they conform. So I've done some lives on that. If anybody is interested, I've got one I can post out in the group if you're wondering about that. But yes, that's something. Another great thing about a tax preparer is that they can be on the lookout for things like that and tell you things like that, which you wouldn't necessarily know, right? So that's great. I love all of that. So Sheena, tell everybody where they can find you. I have linked the preferred vendor list above. If you're watching me on Facebook, at least. If you're watching me on YouTube, it's probably below, I think.
Yeah. So right now, my business name is Growth Advisors and Tax Consultants. And so my website there, you can also find me at Growth Advisors -tax on Instagram, and I reach out with clients, chat that way. I have a simple intake form where I ask a couple questions. It gives me some insight, and then we can book a consult call for free and make sure to have the discussion, see if it's the right fit, and then we can work together on that and get your taxes done and get strategy for going forward.
And you are still taking clients for 2020 tax prep, right?
Yes, I am taking clients still. And like you said, a lot of it times we need to be extending them right now because there just is so many changes going on. So that is not a bad thing. I always get the worry of, is that a red flag for an audit? It's not a red flag at all. The IRS gave us the extension. I know even like, for example, last year, they extended it till July. A lot of states didn't extend as well. So that was a surprise. So it's keeping that all together and just knowing, but yeah, have a CPA on your side to walk you through it. You shouldn't be going through this alone.
Absolutely. It is so, so important to have people that you trust to surround yourself with, as Bree would call it, as part of your A team, right?
Yes.
As a business owner, you want to have that A team around you that can help you and can advise you. Well, this was so great, Sheena. Thank you so much for coming on. I knew people would love you. So I'm so glad. It looks like people are enjoying it. Yay. So check Sheena out. Check out our whole list of preferred vendors. Like I said, don't forget about taxes, you guys. Just because they're extended, let's not forget about them. We need to at least make a plan for what you're going to do. And yeah, we will be back. I'll be back on Friday for a stimulus Q&A. So if you have questions about, PPP, EIDL, unemployment, ERTC, all of those fun things, I will be back for those on Friday at 1:30 Central Time, my time. And yeah. And Sheena will be available on her website. So go connect with her. Go find her on Instagram.
Yeah.
Hit her up. All right.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks,
I love
Sheena.
being a preferred vendor and part of the group. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.